1.6 is going to be kind of a lot of vocabulary type stuff, where we're talking about different types of angles. So some of these words you may know, some you might not know. So the first type of angle are called adjacent angles. And that is a term that you got to get familiar with, okay? The word adjacent means next to, really. Like our classroom is adjacent to the classroom next door, okay? Because we share this wall right here. And so adjacent angles are angles that share a common side. So for example, angle 5 and angle 6 are adjacent angles because they both share, they both share this common side. So if they share a common side, those are called adjacent angles. These angles over here are not adjacent. They don't share anything with each other. They don't share a side, okay? So that's just a vocab term for you. So when I say, hey guys, everybody look at the adjacent angles, you kind of know what I'm talking about. The next kind of vocab words are complementary and supplementary angles. Those are two different terms, okay? So complementary, I will do first. If angles are complementary, means they add up to 90 degrees. Okay, so they have a sum of 90 degrees. So think complementary means that they have to add up to 90 degrees. So for example, angle 1 and angle 2, they make a right angle, they add up to 90. And of course, 20 and 70 adds up to 90. So those two angles are complementary. Supplementary means that they add up to 180. So kind of like the group we were doing, things that make a straight line, like angles 3 and 4, those are supplementary. Okay, they have to add up to 180. Just like the angle 65 and 115, because 115 plus 65 is 180. All right, so we have adjacent angles, we have complementary angles, supplementary angles. So looking down here, if we want to identify some pairs, if we want to identify adjacent angles, this angle here and this angle here are adjacent because they share this side. So looking for adjacent angles, we could say angle QPR. Remember, we're using 3 letters. So angle QPR and angle SPR. Okay, those two are adjacent. They share a common side. Now, which angles are complementary? Well, complementary, remember, means they add up to 90 degrees. Okay, so remember, complementary is 90 degrees, whereas supplementary is 180 degrees. And sometimes people remember that because they're in alphabetical order, C before S and 90 before 180, okay? So which ones add up to be 90 degrees? Well, 68 plus 22 is 90. Therefore, we would say angle XYZ okay, because that was 68, angle XYZ, and angle QPR, because that was 22. Those two angles add up to 90. Therefore, they are complementary. Supplementary means they add up to 180. So supplementary means they add up to 180. 112 plus 68 is 180. So those two angles are supplementary. So we would say angle XYZ YZ and angle SPR. All right, any questions yet? So these are just kind of terms and vocab terms for you guys. And you'll probably refer back to your notes every now and then until we get used to these. All right, so in this example, angle 1 is a complement of angle 2. Remember, complementary means they add up to 90 degrees. I'm just going to write that on there. So if angle 1 is 19 degrees, what is angle 2 going to be? Well, we would have to do then 90 minus 19, so that they add up to 90. So 90 minus 19 would be 71. So the measure of angle 2 would have to be 71 degrees. Okay, they are now complementary. 19 plus 71 adds up to 90. If the angles are supplementary, that means they're going to add up to 180 degrees. So 3 and 4, it says are supplementary. Angle 4 is 107, so I would have to do 180 minus 107, which would be 71 degrees. So the measure of angle 3 is 71 degrees.
Wait a second.
Yes.
Wouldn't it be 73?
It would be 73 degrees. Thank you. So we've got to be careful with our subtracting, right? Good catch, Violet. And so they are supplementary because 107 plus 73 adds up to 180. All right, I'm going to go on to a couple different terms. Are there any questions on those before I move on? All right, so we have a linear pair of angles. A linear pair, think of the word linear, means they make a line. Okay, so angle 1 and angle 2 are a linear pair of angles. They make up a straight line. They would add up to 180, much like what we were doing in the Kahoot. Vertical angles, those are angles that are across from each other. So there's two pair of vertical angles, like angle 3 and 6, that is a pair of vertical angles. Angles 4 and 5, that is a pair of vertical angles. Okay, angles that are across from each other are vertical angles. So if we want to identify the linear pairs in the diagram, I could say like 1 and 5 make up a straight line. So I would say angle 1 and angle 5 are a linear pair. They make up a straight line. But 5 and 4 are not a linear pair, okay? Because they don't make up a straight line. But we could also say angles 1 and 2, that would be another linear pair. Angle 1 and angle 2 are a linear pair of angles. Now for vertical angles, vertical means right across from each other. So like angle 2 and 5 are vertical angles. And notice they are congruent. They have the same measure. The reason I'm pointing that out is because they have to have the same measure. So one of them can't be, they have to be made up from the same lines, okay? So like those two red lines make up those angles. So something like angle 1 and 3 are not considered vertical. Okay, because, 3 is made up from this line, and that doesn't make up a side of angle 1. So they have to be directly across from each other, made up from the same lines. All right, so this one will take a little bit more work. If we have two angles that form a linear pair, remember a linear pair means they're going to make a straight line. So I'm just going to draw a line and cut it into two angles. It says one angle is 8 times the measure of the other angle. So the one on the left is obtuse, and the one on the right is acute. So I'll say that the one on the right is x, and the one on the left is 8 times that, or 8x. So if we want to find the measure of each angle, I know they have to add up to 180. So I would do 8x plus x equals 180. So I combine my like terms, 9x equals 180. And then divide by 9, so x comes out to be 20. Okay, so if I plug in 20 for x, that means that this angle right here is 20 degrees. And this one is 8 times 20, which is 160 degrees. And of course, those two things do add up to 180, right? So I feel good about our answer there. All right, we're moving right along. All right, so the next part is going to combine a couple of things. So we want to name a pair of adjacent complementary. So those are two different terms. Adjacent means they share a side. Complementary means they add up to 90. So if they share a side and add up to 90, 55 plus 35 adds up to 90, and they share a side. So we would say that angle FJG and angle HJG. They both add up to 90 and share a common side. So they are adjacent and complementary. Now, non-adjacent means they don't share a side. So they have to be like disconnected, but also add up to 90. So angles that would be not connected, but add up to 90 could be like 67 and 23. I'm going to use the letters to name the angles. 67 plus 23 is 90. So we would say angle FJE and angle CAD. They're not adjacent to each other, but they are complementary. All right, any questions on those? Okay, I'm gonna skip down here. We've talked about complementary and supplementary already, but there is a couple of other examples I do want to do, and that's just identifying some pairs of angles. So if we want to identify a linear pair, linear, remember, means it makes a line that includes angle 5. So that would be angle 4 and angle 5. Those two angles, 4 and 5, make up that vertical line, so they make up a linear pair.
Wouldn't 5 and 2 also work?
Well, good question. 5 and 2 doesn't work because of this wedge here. So to make up that straight line, we need 5, 1, and 2. You need all three of those to make up that straight line. Okay, so great question. Yeah, it needs to, see these two here, just those two together make up that straight line. Any other questions on that? All right, our 3 and 5 vertical angles. So that's this guy and this guy. Well, if I remember, they have to be made up from the same lines, which they are. So yes, 3 and 5 are vertical angles. You can word that any way you want. They share a vertex and are congruent, are made up of the same lines. What about 2 and 4? You think 2 and 4 are vertical? No, yeah, they're not vertical. The reason they're not vertical is because 2 is made up from those two lines, but if I extend those, it cuts into angle 4. All right, any questions on those? Okay, so just wrapping up, we had linear pair, make up a straight line. We had complementary, adds up to 90. Supplementary adds up to 180. Vertical angles were across from each other. So we just had some other kind of vocabulary type stuff.